What's going on, guys? I'm here with Garett. He is top 200 sellers on Amazon. I don't know. I just made that up, but he's probably getting pretty close. You've done 600,000 plus in sales just this year. You have a business model that's a combination of OA and wholesale. Super smart guy. If you guys aren't already, go follow him on Instagram. He gives a bunch of good content. It's super easy to digest. You can just scroll through his Instagram page and just read. Are they tweets or what are you doing there? You're just like you're typing in text and screenshotting it. Is that?
I tweet it and then I screenshot it. But I usually
follow him on Twitter too. I don't have Twitter, but I like to go through his Instagram page from time to time and just check out golden nuggets that he's posting. He talks a lot about online arbitrage and wholesale. And in this video, we're going to break down exactly his strategy as an online arbitrage, predominantly an online arbitrage seller, adding wholesale accounts and what he does. Does he set up accounts with brand direct, or does he do distributors? Does he do both? We're going to find all that out in this video, and a simple strategy that you guys can implement as well if you guys want to start adding wholesale.
Look, grind hard, well done, sir, and welcome to the freaking Well Show. And party central to my well ones, a night of violated hell codes. Dope sells like the charge do, but selling's all about potential.
So welcome to the show, Garett.
Thanks for having me, my man.
For sure. All right, so what tips do you have? What's a simple strategy that people can use? Let's say you're doing 5,000-10,000 a month in online arbitrage, and you're like, okay, I'm tired of ordering. And we just talked about in the previous video. If you guys didn't see it, click the link below. Video more about online arbitrage, where we talked about how some people are buying 500 plus units online arbitrage. So you can definitely do that with online arbitrage, but if you really want to be able to get wholesale discounts, like it's called wholesale for a fucking reason. If you want to be able to get wholesale discounts and order a lot of products, it's probably important to have that knowledge of how to set it up. So just a couple tips on how to get started. Should we be looking brand direct? Should we be looking for distributors? And maybe you can even harp a little bit on what you talked about previously, that these retail stores sometimes have a wholesale department dedicated.
Yeah, and so I think it's a good place to start is wholesale in general doesn't have to be some buzzword that scares a lot of newer sellers away, right? Typically when people hear wholesale, they say, oh, that's not for me, maybe next year, maybe 2 years. But it doesn't have to be like that. The distinction between OA and wholesale is you're not just adding products to a cart, and you're dealing with people. And when you deal with people, there's relationships that need to be nurtured and monitored as you progress. And that's when you really start to work on these discounts and get better rates, is when you continue to build rapport with these sales reps, right? Because with OA, when you're selling on Amazon, your customer is the end consumer. But that's a little different when we're talking about wholesale. Your customer is your supplier. That is your main concern, your main point of contact. The consumer is still the consumer, but your customer, the person who you offer value to, is the supplier that you work with, right? And so when we're starting to get into wholesale, it's all just a numbers game, right? It's a matter of how many reps, how many brands, how many businesses are you reaching out to, and how often, how continuous are you doing that, right? Because you don't try wholesale if you call 5 reps or email 5 reps. They all say no, and you say, oh, wholesale didn't work for me, right? You have to call hundreds on hundreds, week in and week out. If you do 100 this week, next week, the following, and the one after that, at the end of that, you will have profitable wholesale accounts to show for that activity, that movement, right? Because the numbers behind it is about like if you call 100, you'll probably win anywhere between 15 and 20 in terms of winning those accounts, but not all of those are going to be profitable. Out of those 15 or 20, maybe 2, 3, 4 of them will be profitable, as in you can purchase one product profitably, right? And so we're working with a 2 to 3% conversion rate, winning rate, profitable rate. And so just off the bat, it's not something that you're going to be able to start today and start getting products next week, right? It takes time, it takes commitment, it takes getting told no on the phone from a sales rep time and time again to get through all those no's to find the few yeses within all of those conversations, right? So the kind of the perspective, the standard needs to be set before we even have any sort of wholesale conversations. This is a game that's law of large numbers game in terms of you have to put in the work up front, continuous, time and time again, week in and week out, to reap the benefit, long-term benefit.
right now. They're all fucking hype after what you just said. They're like, I want to call 100 every single week. I want to call 1,000 every week. How do you actually make sure that you're calling the right companies? How do you even get a list of those? Like, what's the starting point for that?
Yeah. And so there's a couple ways to approach it. One, the simple way would be throw into Google toy distributor, toy wholesaler, grocery distributor, grocery wholesaler, any of those keywords, and use your area, right? Because you mentioned which ones to reach out to and focus on and which ones not to. You want to start local first, because what happens is that creates a little competitive advantage over anyone else that's ordering from that same supplier.
Yeah.
If my prep center is in Delaware and I'm working with a wholesaler in Delaware, well, that shipping cost is probably going to be free, if not super cheap, and the lead time is going to be super quick.
Yeah.
So those two things are your competitive advantages that you can automatically bake in your products that someone in California will never have.
Yeah.
Right? If you're saving hundreds of dollars on shipping is expensive. If you're saving hundreds of dollars on shipping on every order, well, that's just added margin points, right? That you can then go lower to and beat someone else out. Right. So starting smaller, starting more local is always going to be a good entry point as opposed to working with some global distributor. Right. Continuing on like the whole which ones to work with and which ones not to. You want to start small to medium first. Right. If you go and call Craft Brand Direct, I mean, you're not going to win that account, or Yeti or any of these massive brands that we all know. Well, you're probably not going to get there. But maybe work a few tiers down the ladder, right? Because what we're doing.
The best way to compile a list of those brands that are within the size that may be able to work with you, that aren't like these monster companies. How do you build a list of those?
So the easiest way would be using some sort of like filtering tools. Scott Needham Smart Scout has one, in terms of it really accumulates brand data, brand information. And so whatever category or whatever niche you're interested in, you can actually get like an estimated like sort of valuation in terms of how much that brand is either moving on Amazon, how many products they have, how many reviews within those products, those sorts of things. And then once you have that sort of information, then you can start making those distinctions in terms of, all right, well, I'm really only looking for brands that are doing, up to 5 million a year, or 10 million, or 20 million, or 600,000. If you're really looking for the small brands, then maybe you want to be looking for 500,000 and less.
In the context of storefront stocking, because I have a feeling a lot of my audience does that, because that's all I ever talk about. That's really all we do right now. I tackle arbitrage, but really what works is storefront stocking. I'll go ahead and share what I'm doing for wholesale, and you can add on it and see if you think it's a good plan or not. But what we're doing is we're finding brands that we know other Amazon sellers have successfully set up wholesale accounts with, or at least we think they have. And I just copy and paste that whole list from Seller Amp. And then I put it in the Google Sheet. My team finds the website, the email, the phone number, they fill it out, and then we contact them.
Yeah.
That's kind of like my philosophy. It's almost like what we talked about in the previous video, like a little bit more of a warm lead. Like if I know this store, I'm like, oh shit, they set up an account with them. They don't work with that many Amazon sellers, and I successfully set up an account with them too. I can go back to their store and say, who else are they working with? And it's likely that any other category or brand that they have 10 plus ASINs of might be wholesale, So do you think that's a valid strategy, and do you do that yourself? And if so, do you have any tips?
Yeah, so most of our information comes from Amazon, right? There's no sense in going after a product or going after a brand if the product data isn't sound, right? So for us, it all starts there. It starts with a good product, right? Obviously going through seller stores and all those sorts of things get you to the product. Once you have the product, then you can map that back to a brand, a distributor, supplier that you can purchase from. That's where the game is, right? The data behind wholesale and OA is the same, right? The starting point for anything on Amazon is being able to distinguish between a good product and a bad, right? The difference in how we acquire that product is different. That's the distinction. But in terms of wholesale specifically, you start with a product, throw it into Google, go to the brand page, go to the website. If you throw in that product's brand and wholesaler, supplier, distributor, you'll likely get suppliers and distributors that carry that brand. And so right off the bat, you'll have a 3, 4, 5, 6 different suppliers or the brand to direct to potentially purchase that product from, right? Because when we're talking about wholesale, it acts as sort of like a tiered ladder, right? Anytime we're going after product, we want to go to the top, right? Because as you work down the supply chain, there's more hands that are going to be in the pot. Every time it goes down a tier, it goes to another supplier, goes to another distributor. People take their profit, and ultimately that leaves you with less. So every single strategy, every single time we're going after an account, we start at the top. We start at the brand. If you don't win that account, a couple things will happen. Either they give you 2, 3 suppliers that they suggest you work with, which happens more than you would think. B, you throw in like the brand in Google, like I just mentioned, or C, just keep going after that specific brand, right? But you keep working down the ladder or they're working down the supply chain until inevitably you get somewhere that will give you access to purchase. It's just a matter of, at that point, is there a profit to be had?
Yeah.
Right. And as you go down, the margins are going to be less. So you might have to then purchase more to sort of bake your margin in, but that's kind of how it works.
Yeah.
Every single time though, you're going after the brand. That's where it always starts.
Yeah. Yeah. We FaceTimed last week and you said you always run a list 2 times. You run it 1 time as is, and the second time, like, you discounted it a little bit, assuming that, or if you could sell these, if you could acquire them at a lesser price, how profitable would the list be then? And then you can go back to the distributor or supplier and you can say, hey, look, I as is, I can't buy anything, but if you're able to get me these prices, I can commit to a $10,000, $20,000 order, and we can see how it works out and build a relationship from there. I like that approach a lot because that's going to open up so many doors that you didn't really think were there before.
Yeah, and so that approach really comes down to like the niche of your wording, right? If you won the account, great. Now you have to see what you can buy. And so, like you said, the first time we just run the list as is, no adjustments, no margin, anything, just to see if there's anything already baked in there. If nothing comes up, which a lot of times nothing will, then you run it again, eliminate any sort of profitability indicator, and just evaluate the products based on the keeper graph without any pay to mind to price. So you're looking for stability, consistency, velocity, everything except profitability. Because then once you can create a list of maybe 3, 4, 5 different products that you would ideally want to purchase, then the approach is, I have these 2 products, and you put the power in the suppliers, the sales reps' hands. How much do you need me to spend to be able to get these at this specific price?
That's a great question.
Because whatever they're likely going to answer, any single answer they give you gives you what you want, which is a number that you need to spend to get what you want, get your margin, get your discount. And the key thing is you're talking with sales reps. You're not talking with you're talking with sales reps who are commission based. So when you start, you're floating a cookie in front of them, right? You're giving him the opportunity to make money. You're putting the ball in their hands. How much do you need me to spend in order to get these products at my rate? So they're going to, that gives them more leverage, more enthusiasm to walk down the hall and talk to their manager, to go to bat for you. Right? Because you're putting the power in their hands. You're putting the ball in their court to be able to give you a number that they want. But ultimately, it's a number that you want too, because then that allows you to buy the product. Keeping in mind that it has the velocity, that has the consistency, stability, all those other things that you want, the profit comes last.
Yeah.
Because you can negotiate pricing. You can't manipulate velocity. You can't change supply and demand. The only factor that you can change when it comes to wholesale is price.
Yeah.
So if everything else fails, leave that aside, eliminate that from the conversation, make sure the product adheres to every single other metric you have, and then try and bring in price later.
Makes sense. Yeah. Amazon Lit shared the other day, Sebastian, he was like, don't ever forget that green talks. When you're brand, don't ever forget what they really want, what the sales rep wants. If you're talking directly if you're lucky enough to be actually speaking with a brand small enough to where you're talking with the owners, what do they want? And at the end of the day, everybody really wants money. What does everyone want who's watching this channel right now? Why the fuck are they watching this? You know,
and it's like they're not listening to what you said, what you're saying. They're only taking 10, 20% of anything that you throw. So if you're not throwing numbers at them, they're not going to listen.
Yeah.
If you're not throwing raw or tangible data points that their brain wants to digest, they're not going to listen. So if you give them actual money dollars, their mind can do the math. Oh, 20% of that I take home, 10% of that I take home, 15%, right? Anything other than actual numbers that you throw at the sales reps, it just kind of falls to the wayside.
100%. Well, appreciate you coming on, man. Again, we just shot another YouTube video. If you guys haven't watched that already, go check it out. Hopefully we'll have Garett on. Again, he's short on time today, but I really want him to kind of look at my business and analyze some of the leads that I fucked up on early on in online arbitrage. So hopefully that video will come soon. But go check Garett out, all social media. He's all over the place. And if you guys aren't already, subscribe to my free email list. We're going to be doing private Zoom calls with smart people like Garett, so you can ask these guys direct questions. You guys can talk directly with me. You guys can talk with literal people who have built 7-figure Amazon businesses face to face. You'd be surprised how many people show up on the Zoom calls that I do and don't even ask a question. So there's a high chance that if you show up to a Zoom call, you'll be able to actually ask one of these guys a question to their face and get a direct response. And a lot of these guys charge, hundreds of dollars, if not thousands. Some of these guys who are really big, just for an hour of their time. So take advantage of that. It's romer.biz. The link will be below. And make sure to go give Garett a follow and subscribe to the channel if you're not already. Appreciate you guys for tuning in. Peace.